People, sup, Juaso. We're going to be interviewing our kid Kuda today. I'm going to try a thing. And if it works, then it'll be like one of those times where you plan out something in your head and it goes exactly according to plan. And it might not, but I feel like it will. So we shall see. Brianna, 0.94. I'm not even going to call you Brianna. Light. Thank you. Snap. Alright, there we go. Yeah, I'm going to be interviewing freaking Arcade Coder today, so we're going to see what happens with that whole thing. Where is it? There it is. Sweet. Yeah, I'm going to do the most dangerous thing you could possibly be doing when interviewing somebody that has an African name, which people do with me, which we shall talk about later. When an individual has never actually said their name and often shorten their name so that their name can be like said by the vast majority of the population, instead, I am going to attempt to say Arcade Kuda's entire name. For the first time in my entire life, I've never tried to say his name before. Luckily, I was watching one of his sister's stories, and she said his last name, which helped a whole lot. Like the first part, that's just vowels. You can get through vowels, but when you get into like consonant combinations and stuff, it gets a little trickier. But everybody speaks with an American accent, so I'm going to learn about that and the history of how he got over here and started doing things and why they're doing the things that they're doing and how they're doing it, because the approach that he took was very interesting. The fan art that he drew was not fan art of chocolate dipped anime characters. He was instead just drawing X-Men and Avatar characters, but using the fact that he's really good at painting in order to do it, which most people wouldn't do. Most people were just like, I'm gonna toss some cell shading, I'm gonna use some lighting, it's gonna be done. He ain't do that. He went in, also on group pictures. You don't just do that. There's no real blueprint of black people doing that. But he also doesn't draw in the styles of like Sakami-chan, because there's many Sakami-chan clones that exist. I was one of them. So we shall see about that in 1 minute. I don't know if I've already invited him to the live. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. We shall see. How is your day going? Is your day going good? Is there something that you are meaning to do today to accomplish that you are going to have done? Because my only goal was to get to Kung Fu class and interview him. And if I can do those things, then I'm good. Just started Zoom classes. Hey, you are a stronger person than me. I wish that I could get through a Zoom class, but I can't. I'm not built for it. I don't have the combination of patience and discipline and diligence that one needs to actually like do Zoom classes and do them well. So, respect to you, because I couldn't do that. I don't know how you sit down for hours in front of a screen to listen to something that maybe you do care about. Maybe you do care about what you're learning in Zoom classes. And if so, you're very lucky as well to be in a position where you can learn things that you care about in school, as opposed to things that just don't have any bearing at all. And yet, IDK, you can do workouts for more than 5 reps. Okay, here's the secret. I don't. My representative does. When I train, the self that you see right now goes into another dimension, and it's replaced by this freaking anime character that I created that just goes hard for no reason. So like, nobody trains with me, because if you train with me, you're either insane or I'm not actually training with you. I'm just watching you do the things that I normally do. Because the people that I train, okay, we was doing a thing one time where like you have cinder blocks. You just put cinder blocks on your arms and you just sit down on air. You just hold the cinder blocks in the air for like a minute. I've only gotten up to 50 seconds, but you can go up to a minute. Your arms will just probably collapse. And collapsing is a terrible thing to do when you have a freaking cinder block on your arms. Yes, I disassociate when I'm working out. It's like holding your breath. If you're holding your breath, you don't want to think about breathing, because then you will breathe. And the point is to not hold your breath. So if I'm training, I'm not thinking about being human. I'm thinking about training so that the training can get done Oh. Snap. Well then. I just realized that I'm going to have to finesse a situation after this interview. So, we shall see how this interview goes. But yeah, if your goal is to train, you can't be a human. If you want to train the way that I train, you can't think like a human. You have to think like something else. Someone else. Because otherwise you'll fail. And failing is never good. It sucks tremendously. Because the things that we do aren't supposed to be done by humans. The things that we do are supposed to be done by extra dimensional beings that inhabit human-like bodies. Like anime characters. Or the people that freaking do one-hand pull-ups. God never told you to do one-hand pull-ups. I'm about to actually project while working out. There we go. I like that energy. That's the type of energy that I need in the world. I'm only human. You really want to be Saitama? I mean, Saitama was kind of corny though. Like, I want to be like Yujiro Hanma, who was Baki's dad. Because Baki's dad was gangster for literally no reason at all. He had no reason to be as gangster as he was. He was like, you know what? You know what? I don't care. You know what I freaking hate? I hate how people sent me freaking Jack's Blade and they were like, yeah, dude, you got to get on his level. He's doing these little pansy one-hand push-ups. They're like, yeah, man, Jack's Blade is the real deal. He can't even do splits. Yeah, you need to get like Jack's Blade. He's out here putting in work. Look at all them one-hand push-ups he be doing. I was doing one-hand push-ups when I was 12. I don't care about him. It's funny that they say working out and astral projecting. Wait till Charmed. Okay, I might actually have to watch Charmed now. You actually kind of making me excited about this show. Because for a little bit, I was like, oh, yeah, it's going to be like some CW nonsense. The effects are going to be bad. And the writing is going to be like on some teenage girl nonsense where it's like, oh, we live in this world of people that live to make our lives terrible. And everybody just doesn't like us. And so we're going to just go about life being jacked up until something happens that lets us get revenge on society. And then we take revenge on society for a little bit before we realize we have moral obligations. And then after that, we find other people with similar moral obligations, and that becomes the people we hang around. Which is usually the case with such shows. But you low-key have me excited about Charmed. So we will see. The funny thing is the effects are better than CW reboot show. Wow. The gall. The absolute gall. Also, I need to make bread. So, we will see if bread gets made. Might just be cooking and interviewing people at the same time. Could be a move. I'm also going to have to cancel this live because it's going too long if we just rambling. At this point, it's a regular live. Alright, so there's food, and there's that.
I'm going to bring my card around. I was just going to ask you to put those 2 items in the trunk for me.
Okay, as I have to interview somebody right now, I will do that right now, and then I will pop back onto the live, and I will invite him to the live, and then we shall be interviewed.
No, not if you have something. I can do it.
Oh.
Just if you weren't,
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. That it will be. I think that'll be back in like 10 minutes. Maybe. Tell me, Jess. The writing matters more than enjoying the show. I can't be out here enjoying shows no more. It's been broken. Brother, what's good?
What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm chilling, bro. How are you?
I'm good. Hold up. Let me make sure that this lighting is correct. Ew. All right. Let me get my glasses. Hold up.
With the clean fade. And how you get this quality on the freaking live, bro? What kind of internet connection you got?
I mean, we got good internet, but also it's like the lighting. That's why I had to make sure I stand or like I sat right by like a window or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
I see. Respect.
So get that good quality, man. You feel me?
Hey, nah. That's how it needs to be. I need to get... You have an iPhone? Is that what it is?
Yeah, iPhone too.
Which type?
7 Plus.
Oh, that's not. That's like 200. I should get me one of those.
Yeah, like it's not crazy or anything like that. I mean, I've had this phone, particularly this phone, for a while now. I haven't felt the need to actually like upgrade or anything. So
There seems to be no reason to unless you like. And if you're a freaking photographer, you don't need a phone to go be a photographer. So like 7 Plus, that seems like the best phone for a price range when you're
right,
talking about phones.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, so far, I mean, it's been good, man. It's all about you just gotta get all the right angles to be able to get all the like the best effects. You know what I'm saying? Because all these new phones, they practically do everything for you now. But if you got like the older phones, you just gotta like, you know what I'm saying? You gotta finesse the lighting and all that stuff.
No, that's good, and it makes you work hard, and it gives you a certain eye for things. You'll kind of lose that eye if you have technology helping you too much.
Yeah, no, for sure, for
Have
sure.
you been playing with photography by chance?
I haven't. I have a good camera though. Like I have a good ass camera that I have, but I haven't like actually delved and like really deep dive into photography. You know, because there's like there's levels as with all like forms of art. You know, it's yeah. There's levels to photography, and I guess I've just done like the basics. You know, just been out there. You shoot up your pictures every now and then you like, you know, throw it into Photoshop. You adjust levels, and you know, that's it. That's it.
People think that's basic because they don't draw. Photography is because when you can actually draw, you understand composition, you understand color theory.
Exactly.
So it's more intuitive for you.
Exactly. And I mean, I have a photographer friend who's like really about that photography life. So it's like when I see him do his thing, I'm like, yeah, I'm not there yet. You know, like you could just look and be like, all right, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. He knows like, all right, if I stand here and the lighting come in here, then you know you got this effect. But for me, I'm just like, all right, the light is coming in the opposite direction. Let me stand here, and then you know, I'm very basic with it. I'm not yet on the next level photography skills. You feel me?
Yeah, you might end up displaying those next level photography skills in your art. I've been studying Muhammad Akbadi's videos a lot lately. He understands lighting as if he was doing it in real life, and that's why his stuff looks the way it does.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's what I also like value from photographers is their ability to see lighting differently. Because again, if you study how they behave, then you become better at just art because then you understand light more. You know, I mean, it's all like all art is like this weird intertwined thing. You know what I'm saying? So you can learn stuff from watching other people being good at what they do. So it's like that's what I do, man. Just watch them, and I'm like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, it's dope. What do you
Yeah.
think? How do you integrate technology without making it too easy on yourself when you're drawing or painting?
Hmm. Repeat that question one more time. You
How
said
how do you integrate technology in your art without making it too easy on yourself when you're drawing and painting? Because when you know when you know about the blending modes, and then
yeah,
you know about photo matching, and then you know about different brushes that look like assets, the
yeah,
work you have to do is very minimal, but you can tell that something hasn't been copy pasted when somebody puts that extra level. But at the same time, we as artists need our time and we need our freaking mental space. So how do you balance those things when you're making stuff?
Well, okay. So I'll say when it comes to that's one of the things that I actually struggled with early when it came to digital, man, because it's like digital does like make things easier. There's less discipline required when it comes to certain aspects of it. However, I guess for me, I because I still draw on paper first, I think that's what helps me not fall into, I guess you could say, like the digital like how easy it can be to kind of finesse art through, you know, some of the new technology that's just available, because again, certain brushes will give you like an immediate effect, and people kind of use that to their advantage. But me, I honestly try to stress, even still using like digital, I still try to draw it like I'm using like a pencil. So I try to get the effect myself by playing with shapes, sizes, and you know, textures and that sort of thing. So I think yeah, just generally trying to do that is what like solidifies or like allows me to maintain the not like delving it too deep into like the digital, you know, into the technology for real.
Yeah, it's dope and it shows too. Cause when I zoomed in and I saw the spiral
Yeah,
scribbles, I lost it, bro. And then I started looking back and I realized, you do that. You put scribbles in your drawings on purpose, like
Yeah.
all the time, and it just adds. Why'd you start doing that?
Well, because I think I inked traditionally, right? So it's almost like when I was inking traditional and I was doing ink art, those lines were just part of just trying to make the hair look more distinct. So then when I jumped over to digital, I'm like, and I tried to do it without the lines, doing without all the little details. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like texture. So I wanted that texture for it. And it's more work in the end, you know, but to me I always find it to be worth it only because like the yeah, like it definitely adds a certain level of realism and just texture and just you know the just stuff that digital honestly can't still replicate. You still got to like try to emulate a certain level because it's art, man. You still got to play with it. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's always worth it in my opinion at the end, you know.
It pays off. It adds depth. It
Yeah.
shows your voice as an artist, which is really interesting. Because I spent like 3 years learning how to draw in the anime style, and now
Yeah.
I do it, and I hate it because it's so easy now, and
Yeah.
it looks like everybody else's stuff, and all the stuff that I made to get there looks like me. So I'll go to my old self to
Exactly.
draw things that aren't indicative of all the work I put in to be able to draw the way I can now.
Yeah, no, no, for sure, bro. Because I think when you, before I would say like before like anime kind of took over and like anime art kind of took over, it's almost like artists, you drew for you. You know what I'm saying? And you just drew what you thought was cool, whether people saw it or not. And I think that, you know, now with just Instagram and just like social media being available, it's easy to get lost in the web of trying to create what other people are creating because you're looking at it, you're like, this is what's cool, so let me try to do that. But when you look at your old work, you're like, but this had more like soul to it. This had more heart to it. And then you just you kind of have to go back to that, man. And I think, yeah, honestly, it's best to go back to that because then it just elevates you because then you steal elements from yourself saying, this was cool. Let me throw this back in there. And with whatever you gained in the future will just make it, you know, so much better. It makes
Exactly. When did you come to the realization that the soul needed to be in your work?
when you know, I mean, I guess I always kind of had the the almost like the drive to maintain the soul in the work. Because I'll say this right now, you know, I mean, it's if when social media was like really kind of fairly new, and it's like you were kind of seeing other artists kind of do their thing. The stuff that garnered the most attention was just Dragon Ball Z. And no matter what, I looked at it and I was like, because I also grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. I grew up drawing Dragon Ball Z too, just like everybody else. But when I started looking at it, I was like, that's too easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's too easy to just take something that somebody already did and just like present that. So I was like, and that wasn't me, you know, and because for the most part I just spent times drawing my own characters and my own stuff to just kind of for my own entertainment. And so I was like to myself, you know what, I'll get good enough to the point where people will look at my own stuff and say this is just as cool if not cooler than Dragon Ball Z, you know, without sacrificing that aspect of just like simply, you know, I mean, Dragon Ball Z is a very easy thing. If you just draw it, people will love it because we all recognize it. We all enjoyed it, you know, way back when it was showing. But that's my biggest thing was just trying to make just basically making sure that I just made the stuff I was making cooler, you know, just make that cooler so that people are like, yo, that's just as dope, you know.
It's huge. The quality will speak for itself. Right now, I'm in a place where, because I
Mm,
had like months where I couldn't draw because I
mm,
was burnt out from drawing for people the entire time. And so it
yeah,
sucked. And I had to like go into other forms of art and painting, like traditional
yeah,
watercolor, in order to heal from the fact that I had injured myself in not being able to make stuff that I like. But now life
yeah.
is good again. And what is your approach to be making sustainable fan art? Because you do make fan art, but the way that you do it is really interesting. And I want to know where that kind of started.
Well, I'll say a big thing is I look at like old art, particularly like Capcom. I grew up playing fighting games, so like games like Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom. Like that was my thing back in the day, and I used to. So it's like when I draw those characters, I almost try to go for that feel when I do like fan art. But then, I mean, with just generally, I've built up my own style, so it's almost like it'll always show when I'm like, all right, this is how I specifically draw eyes. This is how I specifically draw, you know, hair and whatnot. And then the way I color will also add to those elements. But it's certainly like, I think my influences are less of today. They're less of the current anime. They're less of my influences come more from video games, honestly, than anything else. So I think that's what helps lends its hand to the fan art for my personal style is that I'm looking at, and my inspirations are like things from the 90s, like 90s art, particularly Capcom, you know?
That makes sense, because even in Dragon Ball, there's like this YouTube channel where this dude goes through the different artists that worked on Dragon Ball. And in
Yeah,
Dragon Ball, you see it in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you see it in even Street Fighter. The art communities that exist there, the artists
yeah,
still have their voices, even though they're drawing other characters. Their goal is to make the other
exactly.
characters look even
Yeah,
cooler than it does in the video. And that's because before that, you just had pixels. And so in order
exactly.
to make somebody buy something, you had to make it look as cool as possible.
Exactly, man. You're absolutely right. And I mean, I think that's what helps lends in hand because you have like a bunch of artists drawing the same character, but again, it looks vastly different. So it's almost like when you look at that, there are numerous ways you can like basically tackle fan art rather than, you know, kind of sticking to the and I don't even know if there's like a staple, like a generic look for fan art, but I've at the very least tried to, you know, incorporate more of my 90s influenced elements to kind of throw that in there.
That's huge, and it definitely shows. What advice would you give to artists, especially young artists right now, that are being raised in this internet age?
Um, well, okay, that's a good question because you know, people will reach out and ask a lot about, you know, how to grow their following, how to gain more followers, etc. And to me, it's just become such an element of people just want the follows and they just want the likes and whatnot, but they're not focusing on just trying to be great. Like, and it's fairly simple, man. It's just fairly simple. Just concentrate on being good. Just concentrate on getting better at everything. You know, learn how to draw and traditionally, and then learn how to draw you know, digitally as well, but just focusing on trying to get good on all of those elements, then all the other stuff will come along with it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's there's no shortcuts to art. You know, no matter what kind of art form that you're looking at, whether you're trying to write, whether you're trying to make music, whether you're trying, you know, there's no shortcuts. You have to put 10,000 hours into, you know, your craft to honestly, if you want to become good, or if you want, you know, if attention is what you're seeking for your work, just make great work. Just focus on trying to make great work, and it'll all the other elements will kind of fall in, honestly. And also trying to stay true to a voice, man. Don't hop on, and it's not even to say don't hop on like trendy stuff, but like again, when I say try not to just draw Dragon Ball Z all the time because then you don't have a voice. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just basically showcasing somebody else's already established work. But if you take the time to create your own work and really take the time to create your own work, like I'm talking have a world, characters, have a reason for why they dress a certain way and those sort of elements, and just work on that in this time, and your stuff will stand out. You know, your stuff will stand out as long as you're true to what it is trying to display. Don't make a Naruto spin-off type hack thing. Don't make a Dragon Ball Z type spin-off. Make something that nobody has seen yet, but the world needs to see.
Speaking of which, Blue Horizons, tell me about
Yeah, man. I mean, Blue Horizon is still in the works as I'm speaking right now, but it's a very, very interesting story with a lot of elements that just influenced me growing up. So when it comes to Blue Horizon, if I had to just kind of summarize it, it's like a traditional adventure, feel good type story. But it's there are elements that will be a little bit more darker because I also like horror. So I mix a whole bunch of like my influences in there. And for this particular one, for Blue Horizon, I would say like Zelda was one of the big influences. You know, I played a lot of Zelda, and Zelda, I always loved the idea of like a traditional, ooh, you get to explore a vast open land, their kingdoms, etc. However, I was like, yo, if we take that and you take like African culture, but don't milk out African culture, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like for me, I know I don't like it when it becomes too much of like, let's just make it all about Africa. And, you know, I mean, for me, I'm from Africa. So it's like, I understand the need to want to show it and want to display it. But I'm concentrating when it comes to Blue Horizon. I'm concentrating more on trying to create something that's just dope that happens to be from that has African influences, that has Zelda influences, but you can merge those two worlds as well as Victorian culture. I like steampunk era, so it's like I looked at that and I was like, yo, African steampunk. Why has nobody done that yet? So you take that, you mash it, and you throw a little bit of Zelda in it, and you got Blue Horizon. You know, so that was kind of the influences with that. It's a fun story and it's a great story, and I'm just continuing to like work on it to just make it as as like dope as possible because I want people to like see it the way I see it and be just as entertained and just as fascinated with the world and the characters and all that with it, you know.
Bro, thank you for taking the time to actually make it good. Because so many people are just like, all right, I have an idea. I know that I can draw. I don't really know how to write, but I can kind of finesse it a little bit. And I let me just draw a whole bunch of stuff in half phase and make it all at one time and then push it out. And it doesn't do well because it wasn't baked. You have to let things wait, and they change as time goes on, and your characters become these whole separate entities by themselves, and they spawn other entities.
Exactly.
How have you found that creative? Because I'm not sure how deep you are into writing. How have you found that creative process to be?
Um, it's the hardest part to me because I think writing is very underrated. Like, because I think it was like they can, but I don't know if freezing again.
It's all good. I can still hear you.
All right, cool.
It's
As
back.
soon as it freezes, I'm like, this audio freeze or I don't know. What was I saying? Writing to me is the most underrated part because I think everybody thinks they can do it until you have to sit there and do it. You know, because you think you're just writing, it's just from A to B. You know, these characters start here, they're gonna end here. Sure, that's looking at like the skeletal structure of like how to write, but then when you start thinking about, all right, but what would this character do in a moment like this? You know, how do I show these people what this person's personality is through this interaction like this so that they understand who the character is without having to like exposition, you know? So I think that's been the hardest part, but it's been the funnest, like, yeah, it's been the funnest part because you have to it's like breaking down a puzzle, you know. You have to like break it down how the characters are gonna be and how I'm gonna introduce them, and not to enter too much but just enough for people to understand that there's something far deeper there, and that's a balance. That's a balance that I've struggled with because I mean I've been writing Blue Horizon for a minute, and the reason for like mostly the delay has been one, writing, because then I change certain ideas. I'm like, oh, let me move this element of the story back here and introduce this earlier on. And then two, I like as my art skills get better, I want the entire project to just be consistent. I don't want like the first couple pages to be, okay, and then you get to the latter pages and it's like, oh, this is amazing. Why is the first couple pages looking like trash now? So I was trying to get to a point of skill where it's like from the start of the page, you're going to be like, all right, this is good. And by the end of it, you're going to be like, this is great. So those are the two elements that kind of have delayed it, but I've appreciated it more because it's allowed me to like rethink certain elements and like reintroduce a whole different a whole different aspect and the tackling it in a different way. So it's been cool.
It's huge. Someone from the
Yeah.
live, Liddell Park says, how do you come up with the names of your characters?
A lot of the times it's actually very strange. Sometimes I just picture it. Like I'll just look at a character and be like, blah, like the name just flies out and I'm like, all right, that's the name. Sometimes I gotta look through a book, sometimes I'm just like, all right, let me look at all these old Victorian names and find something that just looks cool, but it looks like it could exist in the world of, Blue Horizon and that sort of thing. So there are a few elements where it's like just fly, and then the other ones it's actual like sit down and look at names, because I think that's also a very underrated aspect is naming your characters. Because when you have a bunch of characters, you like the character, then you start getting into that psychology, and then you gotta make sure all that stuff makes sense.
Yeah, it can be a lot sometimes. Like initially I would draw a
Yeah.
character, and I'm just drawing
No.
characters because they look cool, and so I'd be like, yo, what's their name? I like this design. I'd be like, oh, name, that. That would be their
Yeah.
name. But
Yeah.
over time, as I'm writing stories now, I need characters to do certain things, and so I'll put a character in to do. For example, there's like a character that's a mermaid in one of my stories, and so her name have something to do with water because she's a mermaid, but it's a story that takes place in Haiti. So I have to have either African or Haitian name or a name that makes sense that has something to do with water, and that's where the search begins. And finding good names takes so very long sometimes, especially when you get like African names, because a lot of West African etymology, it has the word chi in it because of God. So as a result of that, you'll have like 1,000 names with chi in it, or 1,000 names with Abba in it, and or 1,000 names with Olu in it, and that's because of the etymology of it, which is cool. But you can't have 10 characters with the same pieces of the same name unless you're doing that for a specific reason.
Exactly. No, it's honestly, you're absolutely right. Like, bro, naming characters is an underrated, difficult process sometimes, because you're trying to find names that are like, good, but then they mean something, but then it's got to feel like the character and all this stuff, man. It's there's a lot there's a lot that goes to it, man. Very underrated.
Yeah, it's deep. It goes deep. You know a kid named Chiyozi? That's what's up. Never knew about the Chi? Yeah, it's so West African culture is an interesting beast. I was raised by Hoteps, and so they were like really, really Afrocentric. And then I started hanging around mad Nigerians. And they was like, "You African?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm from motherland, brother." And then he'd be like, "So what tribe you from?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know what tribe I'm from." Snap. And then I got around the Yoruba, and Yoruba got me straight. So now we good. What is your experience been like? What's your experience been like as an African artist and like as an African in America for the time you've been here?
I've had a very interesting experience, man. I've lived in like a bunch of places. So, I was born in Africa. I was born in Zimbabwe, and then we moved to America like when I was a kid. Then I lived here pretty much all the way up until I graduated high school. Then I went back to Zimbabwe. Then I went to South Africa for a little bit. Then I came back to America. So, in a way, like I was the immigrant coming to America, but then from America going back to Africa, I was like the immigrant again. You know what I'm saying? It was like very different. But it's actually helped me kind of see different perspectives on certain things that like the globe, I guess you could feel, because, growing up, it's almost like I have the immigrants teaching and like the manners and like the like the demeanor of an immigrant, but I still understand like the very American attitude that like Americans feel about like creating stuff and like owning and da 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 and all these certain elements about like empowering. And then it's like Blue Horizon to just look beyond just like Egypt, and not say anything is wrong with Egypt, but when it comes to telling stories from Africa, it's like literally they just, all right, we're gonna keep it Egypt. and that's it. You know, that's the only thing that they try to throw out there. You're gonna have like a bunch of different tribes with their own different like methods that I think I tackle that completely different. So I think it's honestly made me a better artist just simply having, because then it allows me to just not be, you know, to I'm not fully Americanized to African culture, but I'm not gonna like butcher it either, because it's like I'm that I understand it. You know, I'm not just gonna wing Egyptian culture and be like, hey guys, Africa, and then everybody's gonna like buy that. You know, like no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna throw in like certain tribal clothing and like jewelry and artifacts and that sort of thing. But then I also still have an interest in American history and world history that I can throw out, that I can throw out some Victorian stuff, because, it doesn't have to be from Africa for me to be like, oh, that's some cool stuff. So it's like I could throw out the Victorian steampunk and then just merge it to create something completely different. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what this goal is about, man. Just make something completely different.
Exactly. That's what should be done. It should be bridging all of the gaps. Ultimately, the greatest art comes from intersectionality, because intersectionality is the point where originality is created. Originality comes from having as many sources as possible, as many sources of inspiration, and then condensing them into this thing that exists now.
Exactly, bro. If you don't think all the cultures out here are fire, then to me you're bugging, because there's like cool stuff from every single corner, bro. There's like cool stuff from the most remote places that you wouldn't even think of. And I think that, just having traveled in a bunch of places and lived with a bunch of different kinds of people, and then different mindsets behind people, like the world is a cool place to me. I'm not just one of those people that's just like, this is the one thing and this is the one thing that's great. It's like, nah, there's some great stuff that you'll find from India. There's some great stuff that you'll find from Thailand and Portugal and like all these other remote places, man. So I try to absorb as much as I can to kind of like create some cool stuff, man.
As you should. It feeds you. And living in the internet age, this is the first time where we can do it in a way where we won't have to do decades of research and make stuff when we're freaking 45, because we have National Geographic and we have YouTube, and the algorithm is just beautiful sometimes and putting you on the gems.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Like, we have so much opportunity to like just be in tune with a whole different stuff, with everything really across the globe, and I'm taking full advantage of that, man. Like, there's just some things out here in this world that you wouldn't think existed until you saw it. Like for me, like I love watching, I mean, you mentioned National Geographic. I love watching like Blue Planet and like shows like that, because you just see the different animals that just simply exist on this planet alone, and you're like, whoa, this is mind blowing. And I think it allows you to just view things in different perspective, and that's overall it adds to your art, man. Art to me, and honestly, this is one of the biggest keys to be the best artist that you can be, man, is to acquire a bunch of knowledge about just everything. In every single aspect, whether you do music, whether you're writing, whether you're like, whether you're just drawing, acquiring a bunch of knowledge, you will become an even better artist. And that's what I try to tell people, man. 40% of art is research. Like, you're just researching shit, and then you go out and you create.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to take in as much as you can and have an informed opinion on the histories of the cultures of the places you're at. There was a story that I'm in, like, probably 11th and 12th grade, called like Black Hats, and it took place in Japan, but it was cyberpunk and it was dystopian, and the main character was like an aboriginal with locks, and he'd take these free skates, which like these skates that you just step on and you slide on them, and he'd take the free skates and use them like boomerangs, because the Aborigines invented boomerangs. But he was blind, had locks, because the Aborigines are like these black people that live in Australia that are blind, that's just out here, and because of what they experienced with the Australians, they had their whole Black Power movement in like the 80s that was mirroring the African American movement that happened in the 60s. And that's a real history that happened.
Yeah, and exactly with that point, bro. Like, that's something I didn't even know. But these are things that when you know about it, it influences your work and it continues to just inspire more creative stuff, bro. Because yeah, man, there's so much history out here. There's so much history. There's so much like just cool stuff that just happened and has happened and is happening that I think, man, like, no, that's awesome. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
so much stuff to make. What's some stuff? What are some like half-baked stories that are in your head that you're like either developing or that you've tossed away because they didn't work the way you wanted them to?
Boy, man, those are by the thousands at this point. I those are by the thousands. When I tell you, I feel like I've come up with more ideas than people ever will in just like a single sit down. Is like I wouldn't even be joking, man. Like there was a point in time, maybe I probably should have had my binder with me, but there was a point in time where it was like I literally would come up with a new idea to write into a sketchbook every single day and be like, oh, this is the one, and I would like write it for days as if like this is the one that's gonna, elevate and change the globe type deal. And then after like a month, I'm looking at it, I'm like, nah, this is trash. You know what I'm saying? You got to get rid of it, because then I think another important aspect is simply like when you think you have a good idea, you need to double check to make sure it hasn't been done. And I think there were a lot of ideas where like I had, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I check and it's like, oh, this has been done. So I got to find a new way to tackle it. I got to find a new way to kind of spin it. But I definitely have had a story in just about every single genre that I've like created and then like, discarded. But I'll say this right now. I have six stories that I'm like, these are the, and that is it. Then I retire. Then I put down the pencil. You know what I'm saying? That's when I drop the pencil and I like, yeah, basically, because I think these six stories cover basically all my favorite genres, and it allows me to put, each one is creatively different than the other. So there's Blue Horizon, Obsidian Rig is the other one I've mentioned before, and then there's the other, what did I say? I said six. So there's the other four. There you go. I don't do math. There's the other four that are then left that are also vastly different from the other, but I'm just waiting to kind of get one done, then I can do the other, and then I can do the other. But those six are my six, and I think I'm done like coming up with new ideas for now.
No, that's huge. And it's necessary because in those
Yeah.
six, you have enough work to literally last you your entire life. And because they're diverse, you can't necessarily get bored of them. I have like four right now that like those are the ones that put my mental focus in. But I'm realizing now as I keep building them that in order to explain things, I don't need more big stories, but I
Yeah.
need more little stories inside of those stories to explain what's happening and to inform what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because I think for a lot of people, when people tell you that, yo, I can write like 10 different stories every single day, da 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 da, da, it's like, that's true, but are they good though? You know what I'm saying? So for me, I feel like it's better to narrow it down to a simple number that you can and then expand upon those ideas. Because then when you think about it, unless it's going to be like a one shot, you're just making, all right, this is 60 pages and the story doesn't go any further than that. But if you're trying to go for longevity, then you have to consider what are the elements in this story that aren't going to be repeated in this story, that aren't going to be repeated, etc. So man, it's definitely difficult, but when you got your list, you're like, oh, these are my four, for me this is my six. It's like then you that's all you have to concentrate on, and it just allows you to just try to make it as great as as great as you can, for real.
Absolutely. Who are some examples of longevity that you look at and you think that's the way I want to be rolling in 20, 30, 40 years?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, without the same amount of hiatuses, I like Berserk, Kentaro Moira. That's the guy who created Berserk. He's been writing it since the '80s, and that's a long time to be writing a single story. Granted, though, he does like things where it's like he'll disappear for an entire year without writing a single thing. I don't want to be that guy though. But at the same time, I don't know if I'll ever be in a position where it's like, hey man, maybe I need a whole year off to make sure that I come correct on the next time around. But there's a couple other creators that have been. I mean, of course, I don't know if Stan Lee counts, but Stan Lee was definitely one of them. You know, the only reason I say I don't know if he counts is because he created alongside other like artists like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and those type of people. You know, Stan Lee wrote a bunch of characters, but without the drawing elements that came from like the Jack Kirby's, I don't think he would have went as long as he did. But that's another like key influence right there. And somebody said One Piece right there. I see that one. And that's definitely another one because One Piece is, yeah, it's just incredible. Granted, though, I can't always read it because I think the art has like suffered as the years have gone by. So I can't like really jump into it all the time. But I commend the ability for it to still be going and still, you know, the story is still interesting. It's just that I can't look at the art because it's just hard to look at it. Understanding that this person can draw even better, but they're just kind of churning it out like a machine at this point. But yeah.
Cool. You're absolutely right, especially in terms of longevity. The thing that sets Stan Lee apart from everybody, like
Yeah.
everybody, is he is the OG marketer of creative material. Nobody marketed creativity like Stan Lee.
Yeah.
He did this by building a connection with his audience that was unparalleled until the days of Image Comics. Like for me, Todd McFarlane is that person who I look at the same way that you look at as Kentaro Miura, because he made he made something that already existed so cool that he was able to write and draw it to the specifications. And he was so dope that he took the followers of Marvel and was like, all right, thank you for the fans, Marvel. I'm going to go make all these.
Yeah. No, that was you know, you're absolutely right, man. Todd McFarlane, top of the list of most inspiring just artists in general, man, because yeah, what he was able to pull off is nothing short of incredible. For somehow he made the Spider-Man that a lot of us know today. Like, and that's something that's difficult to do when a character has been existing since like the 60s. For you to come late 80s, 90s and flip that character to the point and then Spawn, etc., like those things, man. So that's awesome. That's a good one to have up there for real.
Indeed. And I guess that's the tertiary question for you in terms of the major questions I wanted to ask you. A lot of us as artists have a predilection to same face syndrome, and we have a predilection to artist insert characters. How do you stay away from those two things? Is there a character that you have that looks like you that we just don't know about?
Well, actually, that's a funny thing because all my friends literally point out, they're like, this character looks like you. And like, I don't see it, but my friends will like point it out. They're like, why do your characters look like you? And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, so I feel maybe there's a certain element of me that does like insert, you know, my own self in there. But I try to make a conscious effort to vary that whole thing, you know, the same face syndrome / you know, trying to get variety and dynamic just poses elements. Is I watch a lot of Disney, you know, I watch a lot of Disney cartoons, Disney animation, and like Looney Tunes. Basically old animation is like my thing, because of their ability to like grab faces and like stretch and play with how just people look, but you can still tell that it's a human. However, you know, they just throw a bunch of like different elements in there. So I try to look at those, just make sure that I try to vary the faces. But, you know, somehow, you know, my friends keep telling me, man, they're just like, hey, man, your characters kind of look like you. And I'm like, they don't, but, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is.
It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that exists. You making a conscious
It exists, yeah.
Makes sense. But it's like, this is how we freaking learn how to draw. We didn't always have the Explorer page, just have amazing reference all the time. We had to just like look here, or we were looking at somebody in front of us. So like a lot of us draw the same girl. All the girls have the same face because that's the big girl that we was thinking about when we learned how to draw. We either have to learn how to draw different faces, or she just gonna remain the same and her features gonna change a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an element of art that's like, it's difficult to break. But I think once you know how to break it, it becomes a whole lot easier. But just that learning how to break it, man, because it's just the smallest of details can change a whole face. So that's always the thing, you know. You always gotta pay attention. And I think, as you just mentioned, having like reference is always just making sure to keep close reference by that kind of helps you with that ability. But don't copy reference, but let it influence you, you know. And then I think that's honestly how you break the mold of always drawing the same looking characters and always drawing the same looking elements. But yeah, it's part of the journey. It's part of being an artist, man. Draw the same.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I hope they put into like artistic education as time goes on, because literally since the time of the Greeks, people have mathematically, or before the Greeks, but we're going to say the Greeks too, for the late people. People have understand what perfect looks like. We know exactly what perfect looks like. So a lot of people that are classically trained in art, they make perfect art. And perfect art is cool, but you lose your voice in that. The day that I had a nose that I drew, and I took it down by two little pieces, and it looked like a completely different character. I made the eye like bigger than the eye was supposed to be, and started moving around the facial features and making certain parts big and small. That's when making characters became unlocked.
Yeah, exactly, man. You honestly, it's as simple as just getting creative with it. Because as you just mentioned, bro, there's a science to faces. There's a science where it's like the corner of your eyes will always match like the corner of your lips, and the corner of your nose will always match like some sort of like, you can really break down everybody's face into like geometric shapes, and there's a science to it. But that's all great. But if you're really trying to get creative, if you're trying to like really get some fun expressions and just fun looking characters, you got to just start playing with those elements. And you got to, all right, enlarging the eyes. And I think that's probably why anime took off the way it did. Because I think for so long, like when it came to like Western animation, things were just looking the same. They were just looking static. There was no characters that just looked unique. Everybody just had like such normal looking faces and normal looking appearances that I think just as a culture, people were just done with that look. And then anime comes in with these characters, and their eyes all look different. Their hair looks crazy. Their clothing isn't regular, you know? And then it just like, before you know it, you'll find less people that have seen anime than don't watch anime, you know. So it's like to that element. So I think humans as a general focus, like honestly, we probably want to see more fun and interesting looking stuff, man.
I think we do, because after a while, we understand pattern recognition, especially when you have a certain level of intellect or a certain level of critical ability. Like, you recognize patterns, and then those patterns get boring, and then it's on to the next thing, on to something that challenges you. We like to be mentally stimulated, and if something is not visually stimulating, it probably will not be mentally stimulating.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And it's I think when you look at all the best artists, honestly, they have their own distinct style that they approach people and lighting and colors and however, you know, all the elements that basically make an illustration or, you know, art and whatnot. So I think the more people kind of do, the more varying it is, and the better it becomes, man. The better.
Yeah, we need as many art styles as possible. I appreciate the art community having a value for individuality now, and seeing people specialize in certain things. Because for a long time, everybody either they painted like Sakumi-chan, or they were doing regular comic art or regular anime art, and now people are finding different ways to blend things. And there's a dude, Machekano. I don't know if you know about him, but he's freaking incredible. And looking at the way that he combines all of his influences gives me ways to do certain things. In terms of efficiency, this is going to be my last question, because a lot of artists, when we're making our passion project, we're not efficient. How do you balance efficiency, the work you're going to put in, and the effort the time that you have? How do you manage creating art as you want to without burning yourself out?
Well, actually, the way I managed to do that was closing commissions, honestly. And I think that's been a big element, because I think despite a lot of artists wanting to like get commissions, me personally, it drains a whole lot out of me. And because, you know, when you talk to people and you got to go back and forth on ideas, it becomes a little bit like you could work on what you feel like is a masterpiece of an artwork, you present it to them and they're like, I'm not really feeling this. And then you got to go straight to the scratch, back to the drawing board. And that can be exhausting if you necessarily aren't like built for that kind of time. So for me, honestly, having closed commissions had allowed me to just purely focus on creating stuff that I wanted to create. Stuff like I drew. I don't only that. I guess I'll say this. I don't only draw when I feel like it, but when I'm creating stuff that's going directly into my book or directly work that's going to be in the art book, I draw when I feel like that. But if maybe I'm not in the mood to draw, I still draw, but I'll just practice. I'll just draw a bunch of hands, I'll draw a bunch of faces, whatnot. Just so I can keep that element of the discipline active. But when it comes to my actual work, I look to being inspired, and I try to indulge in as much inspiring stuff as possible, honestly, because I think that, of course, you make your best work when you are inspired. So I try to just stay inspired. I try to listen to the music that inspires. I try to watch the shows and the movies that inspire me to continue to fulfill me, to like feel like, oh man, I got to get up and go do this, because if you stop doing it, and maybe you stop indulging in the stuff that inspires you, it's very easy to like stop drawing for like a while, and then before you know it, you've gone maybe like a week and you haven't drawn. But honestly, at this point, I've beat it into my subconscious that if I don't draw for at least 4 hours in a single day, then I feel like I failed myself, because I know that I have the time. I have the 4 hours to do that. But if I spend 4 hours browsing the internet, I'm just on Instagram, I'm on YouTube or something, watching like random videos, then I feel like trash. I'm like, man, what am I doing? I could be working right now. And the thing is, you could do both. You could really be working and browsing the internet for trash. So that's what I realized, and I try to, if I catch myself sitting there doing nothing, I'm like, nah, I need to go do something, just so I feel like I'm working towards that progress and just bettering myself. Because at the end of the day, I think the feeling of not getting better, to me, makes me feel worse than just simply just getting up and just picking up the pencil and just doodling. So honestly, yeah, that was a long summarization of how to not get burned out. But I basically, I draw when I feel like it, and when I don't feel like drawing, I practice. It's that simple for me. Yeah.
That's huge, bro. It's basically this. I think everybody ultimately, once you get to a certain level, you get to that point where it's like, I know how to draw. So it's not going to be that hard when I need to draw. But in order to draw at a certain level, I got to passively get a little bit better. And we have questions.
Yeah.
Good God. And 2 minutes left. We want to knock out these questions?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
What are your favorite anime or TV shows? Top 5 and all across the board. Top 5.
Okay. Anime or TV shows, like both of the same thing?
Exactly. Live cartoon, it don't matter.
Dang. All right. It's going to be hard. All right. Akira is definitely one of my favorite animated films. I love that film. TV shows, Game of Thrones. Attack on Titan. One of my favorite animes. Hunter x Hunter is one of my favorite animes as well.
Nah.
And did I already mention Berserk? Berserk
cartoon,
is in there.
The CGI version one, the anime one. What we doing? With animated Berserk.
The cartoon, never the CGI. Nah, that was disrespectful, man. I hated. They hurt us fans, bro. We were crying. We were all crying. And but okay. Yeah, dude. All right, let me think. Because if I got, and I guess a Disney film will be in there. A Disney animated film, Tarzan. I love Tarzan. Yeah.
Oh, I need to go back and study that whole '90s era of Disney, because that's when they perfected 2D animation and integrated it with digital art before the whole CG wave came up.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And like that, as you just said, man, that's when they perfected it. It was like the best. It's the best 2D animation that you could see, and the backgrounds in there. That's where I get my inspiration for like a lot of backgrounds. It's like when you watch those films, the way they make the backgrounds, it's just beautiful. So I'm like, yeah, these movies, I study them to a T.
As you should. I didn't know it's 5 seconds left. I got a lost track of time. Thank you for coming back so much.
Appreciate it, man. That was